Not in the same
You
regard.
were just waiting for me to stop talking.
I was like, please shut up, please shut up.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going exceptionally well. How are you?
I'm good. I finally finished the X-Files. I'm done. I am completely done with the X-Files.
Congratulations.
I know. I'm really proud of myself for finishing that project. It was a long one. It didn't go according to my plan. Like, as far as my original plan was to post all of the seasons and the 2 feature films before the new season started, the mini season or series started, and that didn't quite happen. But I mean, all in all, I watched all the movies, I watched all the seasons, I watched the new season and reviewed all of it, and I'm pretty proud of the way it turned out and the quality of the reviews.
When did you start that project?
About 6 months ago is when I decided. It was right before, well, I guess it's been longer than 6 months because I talked about it at Indie PopCon last year that I just started, and I just had, at that point, had just finished season 1. And that's kind of when I decided that I was going to do this. Like, it was kind of, at that point, I hadn't announced it yet, so I could still back out. But once I said it on the podcast, I felt like I kind of needed to follow through. And it was kind of the way to force me to do it, is just, well, I'm going to announce it on the podcast. It's something that I want to do, and it's been something that I've been thinking about doing for a while. So I finally just did it. I'm relieved, but at the same time, it's like that was such a big part of my last 6 or 7 months. And so now I'm kind of just trying to fill that void with something else, like some other TV show that I want to watch. So
yeah, I can feel you there. I think anybody who's ever binged anything like that. But I mean, that is a long process, though.
Yeah.
6 or 7 months of having the X-Files in your life and no more.
Yeah, for sure. So if you guys have any suggestions on what I should start watching, definitely email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. I'm thinking about picking up The Wire. I almost picked it up at Best Buy yesterday on Blu-ray, just the whole series, because I've heard that that's like one of the greatest shows of all time, and I've never watched it. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but it was $155 at Best Buy, and I really wanted to get Far Cry Primal, which I ended up getting. So I was like, I really don't want to drop $200 at Best Buy today.
Yeah, that's one of my nerdier resolutions. The Wire. Sure. I got that Blu-ray set for Christmas. I think, you know how it is around the holidays, like you can get it pretty cheap here and there. So
yeah, and I'm sure I could get it cheaper than that on Amazon.
Oh yeah, like for sure. All right, man. You ready to dive in?
Yeah. If this is your first episode, we start off each episode by checking in with each other. We call it What We're Into. So Tyler, what are you into this week?
There's a couple small things that I was able to get into this week. It was a pretty busy week at work, so I wasn't able to nerd out like I typically do, but there were a couple things I got to squeeze in. The first one's nothing too crazy, and you'll laugh at me for even bringing it up, but last Sunday on ABC, they had a Disney 60th anniversary thing. And
didn't even heard about it.
Yeah. Disneyland is 60, I guess. And it was like a special that they had on it. And it was pretty cool. There was a lot of musical guests that were doing Disney covers, and they just talked about the park a lot and kind of cool stuff like that. So, I mean, I've gone on record about being a big Disney nerd before. So that was kind of a cool special to watch. The guy that hosted it, I forget what is Derek Huff, maybe? Like, not even the more famous of the Huff siblings. Yeah. I guess he's from Dancing with the Stars, but I don't watch that show. I'm not familiar with him at all. So it was and he's not funny. He's not charismatic. So I thought that was kind of a weird pull, but yeah, besides that, it was pretty good. But what I really want to dive into is Zoolander 2.
Okay.
It took me a while to see this. This was a movie I was pretty I wouldn't say excited for it after the promotional stuff started coming out, but like 10 years ago, I was really excited for it because this movie's been in development for a long time. Ben Stiller's talked about it before, and it finally got made, and it probably shouldn't have ever been made.
That's
it was
really what I'm hearing.
It was really disappointing. Like, what's your opinion on the first Zoolander?
You said it took you a really long time to see this movie, the sequel. It took me a really long time to see the original.
Really?
From start to finish, I did not see the original until this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's surprising.
My wife loves it, which I had no idea that my wife loved this movie, but she thinks it's like one of the funniest movies she's ever seen. And I just recently learned that about her, which is strange. And we were actually planning on seeing this last weekend, but I hadn't heard great things.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of hesitant to go see it. And I think she had to work that day. And so when she got home, she wasn't really feeling it. And so we didn't end up watching it. And it sounds like I didn't really miss a whole lot.
Well, I mean, in that whole thing, you didn't tell me what you thought about the original.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was the original question. I liked it. I think it's funny. I mean, it's stupid for sure. And it's supposed to be stupid, but I think it's Ben Stiller and Will Ferrell kind of doing what they do. And before they became really annoying.
Yeah. I don't know how I would react to that movie if I had just seen it now at 26 years old, but I loved it when I first saw it. I loved it through middle school and high school or whenever that movie came out. And it was just kind of one of those staple movies that you watch with your buddies in high school or whatever, and you get a good laugh out of it. And so needless to say, having that kind of nostalgia reaction to the first one, I was excited for the second one, and the bad reviews started coming out, and I'm like, well, I got to see it for myself because I could see the original Zoolander getting bad reviews and me still thinking it's funny.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to let that kind of put a damper on Zoolander 2. And it starts out really cheesy and really like dumb, but that's what you expect. And I would say I laughed more probably in the first 15 minutes than I did the rest of the movie. It spirals out of control. There's a lot of cameos in it, which some of them are cool, but the others are definitely shoehorned in. And if you end up going to see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about at a certain point. It's not funny. It doesn't make any sense for why some of these people are in this movie in certain scenes. I don't know, man. It continues to spiral out of control. There's no fluidity to the story.
Yeah.
So it's one set piece to another. It doesn't make any sense. Like what I liked about, I shouldn't say what I liked about the first Zoolander, but what worked with the first Zoolander is it's a simple story. It's about this male model and this and that happens and you get to the conclusion. In this movie, they're all over the place. There's multiple characters that are, kind of come in and go away. Just does not make sense at all. It's a convoluted mess. Will Ferrell doesn't show up till probably about 75% into the movie. You can kind of tell that he just kind of probably did this as a favor to Ben Stiller. Owen Wilson's not great in it. It's just, it's a bummer for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard about it, was the cameos were the funniest part of the movie. And for me, that kind of stuff dates it a little bit. Like if you watch it 5-10 years from now, these people, some of these people, I don't know, I've obviously not seen the movie, but some of these people might not be that famous. And if you're younger and you watch this movie 5-10 years from now, I think that type of humor kind of dates it a little bit.
Some of the cameos were good. Some of the cameos made me laugh and were funny. There's a Susan Sarandon cameo that you're going to particularly love, but there's some, it's not really a spoiler. There's a part where they're in Rome and Derek's up on a roof shouting about something and Hansel's up on a roof across the street shouting about something. And then they pan over to this other roof and Katy Perry's there. And then they go to a different roof and it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's just, that whole scene didn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. It didn't make me laugh. It was really weird though. I was in this theater with an old couple and it was me and this old couple and they didn't laugh once. And I don't know what they thought they were getting themselves into, but it was a weird situation for sure.
So you were on a date with two old people?
100%.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
No, but I don't know. If you like the first Zoolander, obviously see it for yourself. I just would maybe wait for Netflix or something. I don't rush out to see it.
Okay, cool.
All right, man. What are you into?
I am into a movie as well. We actually went and saw it together. We were on a date, a man date. We saw it last night. It's called The Witch. And I think we're gonna disagree a little bit about this. We haven't talked about it yet. We don't talk about movies a whole lot anymore.
Not unless the mic's on.
Yeah, exactly. So this movie was written and directed by Robert Eggers, which is, I never heard of him before this movie, which makes sense because after we watched it, I looked it up and it was his first feature film. So it makes sense I wouldn't have never heard of him. It's about a recently banished colonial family that tries to make it out on their own, but is met with some resistance from a supernatural force. This movie, every aspect of this movie is well done. Like, it's a beautiful, as far as the set pieces, there's a lot of beautiful detail to it. There's a really creepy score. I think some of the sound editing was a little bit off, or maybe the mixing. I don't know the difference between the two, but some of the music kind of overshadows some scenes. So, I mean, maybe that could have been done a little bit better. The acting was fucking phenomenal. I didn't think there was a weak link. Even with the kids in the movie, I thought they were great as well. And this movie definitely it goes by the whole adage, less is more. I think a lot of great horror filmmakers know that, yeah, you can kind of get the easy scares by doing the jump scares, and maybe some people that aren't used to horror movies, that don't watch a lot of horror movies, might leave the theater thinking, wow, that movie was really scary because I jumped frequently during the movie. But those are easy to kind of shake off, those types of movies. They don't stick with you. And I think the lasting kind of scares are the ones that are harder to shake off, because it's more about the anticipation. Your imagination is a lot worse than they're ever going to come up with in movies. So I think a lot of great horror directors and horror filmmakers understand that it's about the anticipation. But that being said, eventually you have to pay it off. And this movie is all about the anticipation, and it doesn't pay off. Like, it builds really well, and like I said, it's really well put together, and it's acted really well. But it just doesn't pay off. And that was a bummer for me, because I was really enjoying the movie at the very beginning. I think the scene with the girl playing peekaboo with the kid was really well put together. It was really creepy. I like like I said, I like the whole less is more. I liked the idea of her playing peekaboo and all of a sudden the baby was gone. And then you kind of see the woman or whoever it is kind of go off into the woods, and you kind of see the trees rustle. And it's just, I like that type of horror movie, that definitely less is more. And there's some effectively creepy moments, like I said, with the baby disappearing, but for the most part, it just did not pay off the way I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I agree. There definitely was not a payoff in this movie. I think the disagreement that we're going to have is, like, I definitely know where you're coming from. Like, the atmosphere in a horror movie is, for me, way more important than jump scares or anything like that. And I think that the full theater that we were in, almost everybody in that movie, just from listening to them talk afterwards, were anticipating, like, a standard horror movie from jump scares and that kind of stuff. That's the experience they were looking for. And obviously they didn't get it with this movie. And I had heard a lot of great things from this movie. I know Stephen King had said some great stuff about it, and it's getting rave reviews, and it honestly just bored me to tears.
Oh, really?
Like, there were certain scenes here and there that really captured my attention and kind of had me on the edge of my seat, and I wouldn't say scared, but, more effective than a run-of-the-mill horror movie. But there were too few and far between. Like, I like the baby scene, like you talked about. There's some stuff that happens in the climax that was interesting, but the dialogue in this movie it even says in the credits, is taken directly from some of the old folklore stories from around that time period. And while that's kind of cool, it's also very hard to follow and very fucking boring. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it was boring. It was definitely hard to follow, because it was done really quickly, and we don't talk like that. So it just takes like that half second to process, but as you're processing, they're still talking. Yeah. So it's like you would miss things here and there. Yeah, it had been a long day. I struggled to stay awake. I heard such great things about the atmosphere of this movie. I was hoping that would capture my attention and keep me interested, and it just didn't, because those scenes were too few and far between, like I said, for me.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again.
I probably won't either. I had obviously it's a small nitpick. Why was the goat named Black Phillip? There was no other Phillip in the movie. Why do you have to distinguish between the no other Phillips in the movie? And at the very least, it's African American Phillip.
No, I don't know. I was disappointed for sure, but again, I would like to see more from Robert Eggers, because I think that he could, if he does something original, which this is original, but it's based on those folklore tales. But if he were to do an atmospheric horror movie, maybe set in modern day or something a little more interesting to me, I think that it'd be something right up my alley. And this was close, but it just didn't nail the landing for me.
Yeah, it had everything was done so well, and it had all the ingredients to be one of those great horror movies, kind of like The Descent and The Babadook, and it works. I like how they built the family dynamic and stuff like that, and how you kind of felt for them struggling, and basically at this point in history, like if you didn't get enough food, like you died. Like I can just go down to Walmart and buy some more food, but they had to hunt, and they had to grow their own food, or they died. And so you felt the pressure. I mean, obviously you can't really relate to that, but you kind of felt the pressure, and especially the father kind of obviously takes on that burden. And so you appreciate that. It kind of has all of the ingredients to be one of those great movies. And then the supernatural aspect comes in, and it just doesn't pay off like it does in The Descent and in The Babadook. So it definitely has that type of blueprint to it. And it definitely has all of the right ingredients. It just doesn't pay off at the end.
Yep. I agree.
What would you give it though? I'm just curious, like as far as star rating.
Probably a 3.
Okay. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I kind of went back and forth between 3 and 3.5. I think ultimately I would give it a 3.5, just because the set pieces are beautiful. The acting I thought was just amazing, especially with the little kids, because I don't think kid actors are kind of hit or miss sometimes. And I thought even the little kids, the twins, were super creepy.
Yeah, they were creepy. The only, I guess, and I don't know if it'd be so much with the actress or with what she was given, but the mom annoyed the fuck out of me.
Really? I thought she was great.
No, dude, so bad. So bad. I don't know that it's necessarily her as an actress. I mean, she's playing a distraught mother.
Yeah.
But just the character, I guess, was super annoying to me.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
So the next segment, Tyler and I read a ton of comics each week, and we like to spotlight one or two. So Tyler, what are you reading this week?
I got caught up on Astonishing Ant-Man.
All right, cool.
Well, what I think is caught up. I haven't bought my comics for this week, and I think issue 5 came out this past week, and I haven't bought it yet. But of what I have in my house, I'm caught up. So that means I have read issues 3 and 4. And I talked about this comic once already, and I'm still really digging it. It's really funny. I would say it's probably the funniest comic I'm reading right now. I know that I think you've said before Howard the Duck's really hilarious. I don't read that. And so I would say by far out of everything I read, this is the most meta, definitely the most aware of itself, which I really appreciate. Issue 3 is pretty much just a team up between Captain America, the Sam Wilson version, and Ant-Man, which is kind of cool. They have a funny dynamic together, and it kind of plays off of what we saw in the Ant-Man movie as well. They make multiple references to him not being the real Captain America, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
And they even kind of make a one-off line about Bucky Barnes, which was pretty humorous as well. Issue 4 kind of gets back to the main story, which is basically this company has developed an app where you can hire a henchman.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of D-list villains that kind of have been popping up, which is funny as well. Ant-Man talks about how they're not even his villains and stuff like that. So that's pretty humorous. And then there's also some tender stuff between him and his daughter. Some, he's distanced himself from his daughter because he doesn't want to put her in danger.
Yeah.
But he still like shows up to her basketball games and stuff just in tiny form.
Yeah.
And she doesn't realize it. And in issue 4, there's kind of the first confrontation that we see between them in the Astonishing Ant-Man series, which was kind of nice to see. The one thing that I'm going to complain about, because I thought it was just a little too weird and a little too meta, was that in issue 4, Paul Scheer shows up.
That's strange.
Yeah, the comedian Paul Scheer, I know him from The League. He was on Human Giant. He's done a lot of stuff. Yeah, he shows up as himself.
Yep.
And in a little, like, you know how they'll reference something and they'll put asterisks and then there's a box explaining the asterisks. Well, they explain like he's written like one of the Guardians comics and this and that, but this is the Marvel Universe version of him. And apparently he uses the Henchman app, which brings this henchman to this basketball game. And it's really weird, a little too on the nose for me. I don't know that I appreciate that as much as others might, but besides that, it's still a really solid comic that I'd definitely recommend. Yeah.
This is one that I think I've read the first 2 issues, but I'm a little bit behind on it. It's great. I agree with everything that you said, even though I am not as quite as caught up as you. But yeah, I mean it's a great book. It's funny. I wouldn't quite put it up there with Howard the Duck. I think that does it a little bit better. I mean, it does that meta, self-aware type of humor a little bit better, but I mean, it's essentially the same type of comedy, and I appreciate both characters a lot.
All right. Awesome, man. What are you reading?
I'm going to talk about the newest book of The Dark Knight, The Master Race. Book 3 came out this past week, and I believe I talked about this when book 1 came out, and I don't want to say disappointed because disappointed is kind of a strong word, but Frank Miller has set such a high bar for his work with this character and this trilogy in particular, that if you're kind of grading by that standard, it's definitely disappointing. The first issue was pretty vague. It really kind of just set the stage for this world, and they do a lot of like interesting things with like people texting and tweeting and stuff like that, and that pays off a little bit more in the third book. But it doesn't really give you a whole lot of idea who or what the Master Race are. The second issue is a little bit more clear. It does leave you with a bit of a cliffhanger, so you kind of start getting the idea of where the book's going to go. And the third issue is basically just all out war. Like, you know who the Master Race are, you understand where they're going, and so it's a little bit more clear, so that was nice. But the thing that I'm kind of disappointed in is the fact that it's much more of a Superman story than it is a Batman story. The Master Race, and I won't spoil anything, but the Master Race have a strong tie with Superman. And Batman at this point is almost playing kind of a backup role and taking a back seat to Superman. And just, I've made my thoughts clear on that character. The Dark Knight, the Master Race, the Dark Knight is in the title, and he barely plays a part in this story, and it's kind of a bummer. I get the idea of really with this trilogy from The Dark Knight Returns is kind of showing you a little bit more an older Batman. He's a human being, obviously, and so he has some weaknesses, and I get that that's what he's trying to do, but in this issue he can barely walk, so it's like I don't know. It's much more of a Batman or much more of a Superman story than a Batman story, and so that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I mean that would bum me out too. I'm not caught up with it because I want to read The Dark Knight Strikes Again first.
Yeah,
which I haven't. I've only read Dark Knight Returns, which is fantastic. What's kind of turned me off about this comic, from what I've read, is it almost seems like Frank Miller didn't play as big of a part in it as they've originally led on. Like, I forget who his writing partner is, but they were at some con like last week or the week before, and he kept giving all the credit to this other guy and kept pushing the credit away from him. And it makes me think that Frank Miller was more of a consultant on it, and they just wanted to get his name on it because obviously sell more books. I don't have anything to back that, but that's kind of the impression I get from it, and that kind of turns me off a little bit.
Yeah, that would make sense, because I know that there was a rumor, I think we talked really briefly about it on a past episode, that he kind of wants to do another one.
Yeah.
Because he wants to do his vision. And so that would make sense that he took kind of a backseat to this particular part of the trilogy.
Yeah, so that's disappointing. I am looking forward to eventually getting into it. It's 8 issues, so it won't be that much of a read, even though I'm a bit behind. And the 3rd issue just came out, right?
Yeah, it was this past Wednesday, yeah.
So, I mean, we're not even halfway through yet. We'll see where it goes, but, you'd think they'd making a huge deal about this comic right now, since has ties to Batman v Superman a little bit, and they're not really, so, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been kind of a bummer. Like I said, disappointed. It's kind of a strong word, so I don't want to go quite that far, but it's just bumming me out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that.
All right, so our next segment is kind of Tyler's baby. We talk about nerd news. He kind of gathers all the big nerd news stories, and we just discuss them. So, Tyler, what do we got for nerd news this week?
Nothing fantastic.
Okay.
But we'll go through here. So, the first story is for me, and then the second story will be for you.
Okay, cool.
Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 are getting patches and updates and being released for Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I fucking love these games. I think I've gone on record before saying Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time. So I'm excited. I've actually had been thinking about that for like the last few months, how much I wanted to play Resident Evil 4 again. So I'm really excited that I will be able to do so on my Xbox One. 5 is a lot of fun as well. 6 I wasn't as big of a fan of, but I'm excited to play these games again. I love them to death.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before on the podcast. I think it was the first one I went and played it. I'm pretty sure it was on the PlayStation. And the controls were inverted, and I fucking hated it. I just rented the game, and I played it for like an hour maybe, and it was just so frustrating to me. I couldn't figure out how to change it, and so I just kind of gave up on it, and I just kind of gave up on the franchise after that, which I know in retrospect kind of sounds like a silly reason to give up on a franchise that everybody kind of raves about. But I know that we've played 5 together, all of 5 together, and that was a lot of fun.
It was.
And then I know we played part of 6 together as well.
Yeah, 6 had like 3 or 4 different campaigns where you played different teams, and we played through, I think, the Leon one.
Yeah. So we've only played a little bit of 6, but that was always really fun. So I feel somewhat connected to the franchise, even though obviously I skipped quite a few titles there.
Yeah, whenever it comes out, I would recommend picking up 4. Obviously, It's not co-op, so you play it on your own, but 4, I love 4. And then 5, I really enjoyed playing through that with you whenever it came out. It was earlier in our friendship. It was a bonding experience. So who knows? Maybe without it, Resident Evil 5, we wouldn't have the nerds you're looking for.
Maybe not.
Okay. Like I said, that story was for me. The story is for you. Bones has been picked up for a 12th and final season.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm glad that they're finally kind of giving it its final season and saying that it's its final season so it can finally wrap up. I think 2 seasons behind on this show.
I didn't realize you were behind.
It got to the point where, I mean, how many times can you do the same thing over and over again? I like the characters.
Yeah.
And I like that they're finally together and have a kid together, and that brings a whole new dynamic to the show, but I'm just going to wait for it to be over and then just go back and finish the last couple of seasons.
How many episodes are in a season of Bones?
I think there's like 12, 13, something like that.
Okay, so that makes more sense than I was really hoping you wouldn't say 22 episodes, because that is a fuck ton of episodes of that show.
No. But yeah, I mean, it's a good show. It's nothing special. I mean, it's a cop procedural. It's a CSI type of show. I mean, the Booth and Bones kind of make it. It's one unique quality is those particular characters. So that's fun. My wife got me into this because she loved that show for a long time, especially when we first started dating. Is one of those things like I was showing her all these horror movies, and she was kind of showing me Bones and Buffy and certain other things. So, she's made me a better nerd because I would have never watched Buffy, but yeah, it's just, it's one of those shows that's kind of like our thing, even though we've kind of lost touch with it the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I'm excited that they finally said this is it. Like, I was afraid that they were just gonna cancel it. Like, after a season was over, just be like, oh, yeah, that was the last season, and they didn't really give it a chance to kind of wrap it all up. So I'm glad that they gave it one more season, and that's its final season.
Yeah, when my wife and I started dating, I was showing her bones as well, but not in the same
You
regard.
were just waiting for me to stop talking.
I was like, please shut up, please shut up. Okay. So episode 8 has begun filming, and that is all I got. I just felt like it's on every single nerd resource I go to, so I had to bring it up. So there's no opinion to be had.
Yeah.
Again, this is another one of those really no news stories that was just talked about so much because it was a bad week, so I thought I'd bring it up. Justice League will begin filming soon, and Zack Snyder tweeted out a picture of him and Jason Momoa, and I guess it was in like Zack Snyder's workshop or whatever, and in the background you can see the the Flash costume and what might be the Cyborg costume and this and that, and obviously he knew what he was doing when he tweeted that out. He was being a tease. But for me, what's better about this is like they have a start date of April, and I don't know, I had read a couple articles, and I think I brought it up last time, that Warner Brothers was like nervous about Batman v Superman and was nervous that it wouldn't be like the launching pad that it wants it to be for like the Justice League and its other characters, and that they might be holding off on Justice League and replacing it with a solo Batman movie and so on and so forth. So this kind of, I'm guessing the reason that Zack Snyder put this out was to kind of negate those rumors without actually commenting on it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that, I think that they should just, at this point, like, even if whatever happens with Batman v Superman, just keep going with whatever you're thinking. Like, if you need to make adjustments creatively to the future movies, do so, but don't scrap it and start again in 2 years. Like, you're invested, you just got to go with it now. And I mean,
how bad Man of Steel was didn't really stop them from making this movie. So, I mean, why stop now?
Yeah. So I just take the reception that Batman v Superman gets, and
which hopefully will be bad.
I'm hoping. Well, obviously, yeah. Obviously, I'm hoping it to be good. I don't know. I think that Batman v Superman will end up with something in the 60s. That's what I'm.
No way. That is the best case scenario for you, to be honest.
I think that's what it, because I think
it'll be 40.
I think Batman's gonna save it for some people.
I was at Best Buy. If you follow us on Instagram, I was at Best Buy yesterday getting my new stereo installed, and I was just kind of walking around. I was there for like 2 hours yesterday, and they for sure thought I was stealing things because I had my satchel on my. They for sure thought I was stealing.
You had
stuff.
A satchel?
Yeah, I have my work bag with me.
Your man purse? Sure,
whatever. If you want to call it that.
Okay.
Sure.
That's what I would prefer to call it.
And I almost tweeted this out. It sucks that I don't think this movie's going to do well, and I don't think, well, I mean, box office wise, it's going to do well, but as far as critics are concerned, I don't think I'm going to like this movie.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Those Batman toys look fucking cool.
Which ones?
With him in the metal suit.
Oh, yeah.
I think that looks badass. And I wish that this movie was going to be better, and I would want to collect those toys.
Yeah, there's a cool toy line, and I don't know, it's like kind of like the whole universe, what they have going on right now that we have at Target, and you got the Batman v Superman people, you got Batman, Armored Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And you have Flash from the TV show, Arrow from the Green Arrow from the TV show. And then you also have Joker from Endgame, which I thought was really cool. So it's kind of like this hodgepodge of different pieces of the DC universe right now, comics, TV, movies. And I've thought about collecting them, but I ended up not.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some cool merchandise out there right now.
Yeah, and it just kind of bums me out because I don't think the movie is going to be that good. Obviously, I've stated that quite a few times. And it's just like, I don't want this cool figure and the movie suck. That doesn't do me a whole lot of good.
I think, I don't know. I don't expect you, even if this movie does well with critics and does well with the fans, your pride is too high to ever admit to liking it.
See, we've had this conversation before. I will admit that if it is good, I will admit.
I don't think any movie that has Superman in it will be able to play to you.
Well, yeah, I think I will definitely have problems with that aspect of the movie, but I think they're going to shoehorn so much shit into this movie that if the other stuff is good, then I think I'll find enough to like about it. I think best, like you just said, 60%. I think that's the best case scenario for Rotten Tomatoes. For me, I think a 3.5 is probably the best case scenario for this movie.
Did you see, you probably didn't see the last trailer for it?
I'm really avoiding it.
It was a really simple trailer as opposed to the second one I didn't like. And it starts out with like Batman kind of crashing like this gang thing, or, you know, what Batman typically does. And the fight in it that's briefly shown was amazing. Like, it's better than, you know how much I love The Dark Knight and the Dark Knight movies. Like, it's more what I would expect from Batman fighting than any of those movies did.
Okay.
Which was really cool. So I hope that there's a lot of that in this movie, which there probably won't be because he's sharing screen time with Superman and Lex Luthor and so on and so forth. So,
yeah.
Anyways, let's see. I think I have one more. Yeah. So Finn Jones has been cast as Iron Fist for the Iron Fist TV show. Are you familiar with who Finn Jones is?
He's in Game of Thrones.
He is in Game of Thrones. He plays one of the Tyrells, Loras Tyrell.
Yeah, he's the one that's the gay guy.
Yeah, he is homosexual on that show.
Yes.
And he might be homosexual in real life. I don't know. I don't care. Any thoughts?
I mean,
it sparked a bit of not an outrage, but a controversy because people were hoping that they would cast an Asian actor in the role.
Yeah.
But from what I read, I don't know a lot about Iron Fist. He's always been a white dude in the comics. So, I mean, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but it's not something where they changed the race for the show. I guess people were just hoping that they would go an Asian route with it since it has a lot of martial arts.
Yeah, I mean, when I read the story, I was just like, okay. Like, I didn't really have a whole lot of opinion on it.
All right, moving on.
Okay, so the next segment is kind of just a main topic. It changes from episode to episode. This episode, we're going to review the first season of the Amazon Instant Video series Mad Dogs, which is based on a British show of the same name. It was actually released last month on Amazon Instant Video, but with me watching so much X-Files, that kind of took up all of my extra time to watch TV. So we're just now getting around to watching it. And Mad Dogs is about 4 childhood friends that travel to Belize to visit another old friend who happens to be caught up in a money laundering scheme involving the CIA and some drug dealers. So we're going to do this review much like we do reviews of movies. We're going to talk about broad strokes, and then we're going to go into the story, performances. And then unlike movie reviews, we're going to actually talk about a few notable episodes. We won't go through each episode. We'll just pick a couple and talk about it. So broad strokes, what'd you feel about the first season of Mad Dogs?
I thought that it started really well, but very quickly loses steam. I enjoyed the cast for the most part and their chemistry together, but for the most part, this show it's only 10 episodes, but it still drags and falls apart with each episode to me. So I was really not a fan of Mad Dogs.
Yeah, I think we're going to agree completely on this show. I'd heard a lot of good things leading up to it, and it was one of the reasons why I wanted to watch it, and then I wanted to review it on the podcast. I was really, like I said, I was really excited to dive into it, but I needed to finish the X-Files first. The production value for this show is outstanding. It's a beautiful show. The colors really pop as far as the camera and whatnot. There's a lot of exterior shots like of them in the jungle that are really great, and they just look outstanding. It starts off with a really solid pilot, a really fantastic pilot, and like you said, it quickly falls apart after that. This show is one of those shows that it has a lot of threads in it. They introduce a lot of different characters and a lot of different threads, and it does not tie in though. It's not as clever as this show thinks it is. And it just, a lot of the storylines and the threads just kind of fizzle out or just don't get wrapped up at all.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely disappointing.
Yeah, it's basically the movement from one set piece to another without a lot of resolution.
So moving right along to the story, as you could probably tell in my broad strokes, this was my biggest problem with the series so far. I don't like, I kind of hate when television and movies do this where it feels like they create artificial obstacles for characters to overcome. The good movies and the great movies, these obstacles come naturally through the course of the story. In this series, and I hate using hyperbole, but it's probably one of the worst examples I think I've seen in television, where the characters need to go from point A to point B, and just like C and D happens. Like they couldn't, and a lot of it has to do with a lot of horrible decisions that the characters make. And I appreciated that these are these ordinary guys that kind of get wrapped up in this horrible situation. And they're not cut out for it. So I appreciated that. But as the show goes on, these things, these obstacles that they have to overcome just become more and more ridiculous. Like, I think it was either the second to last episode or the last episode, literally a character falls in a hole. Like, that was a obstacle that they have to overcome.
Yeah.
It's really bad. They can't get from point A to point B without C and D happening, and C and D are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is them making horrible decisions, but at the same time, a lot of it's just stupid shit that just, oh, it's the third episode and there's 10 episodes. So you know that, oh, they just have to get to the airport or they have to get to this place and then go to the airport. But you know, since it's the third or fourth episode, that they're not going to ever see the airport in this episode, or something bad was going to happen. And through the course of 10 episodes, you just can't keep doing that. I just was rolling my eyes harder and harder every time it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. But unlike you, where I didn't really appreciate that they're normal guys making bad decisions, because it was basically just 10 episodes of a group of friends making terrible decisions. And yeah. I could understand if some of the plot twists here and there were on them. I mean, they're in a country that they don't know, dealing with people they don't know and circumstances they don't understand. But it started out as them being fucked by circumstances, the circumstances they were in, and then by the end of the show, it's just them continually fucking themselves.
Yeah.
And that got really annoying, and I got super annoyed with the characters and the decisions they were making.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked about the story is I liked how there was some aspects of it where they basically, and it was definitely a trope that they kind of went back to the well throughout the season. It kind of wore on me a little bit, but especially at the beginning where they're old friends, but they've kind of drifted apart. And so when they've gotten back together, sometimes they pair off and they just kind of fight. And I thought that fractured relationship was interesting at the beginning, but towards the end, it just kind of wore. It was just a well that the writers kept going back to, and it just didn't work for me towards the end of the episode or towards the end of the season. I think this could have been a really solid 6-part miniseries, because there was a lot of stuff here and there, like I said, that over the course of 10 episodes that just kind of wore on me. But there was some good stuff. I didn't like, however, that there was really not a strong villain. There was just like 3 or 4 really weak, not fleshed out villains.
Yeah.
And I guess the show thought that the stuff with the fractured relationship and the character work was just going to kind of carry it, but there was really no strong villain. Like, they had the cat, but then he's just a weird guy. Like, they don't really develop his character that much. And then you have the drug dealer, but you hardly, I mean, you go episodes without seeing him, and they kind of shoehorn him towards the end of the season, and that wasn't really fleshed out. Then you have the CIA, and they kind of get thrown in there. You see the guy early in the season, and then he doesn't show up again for like 3 or 4 episodes. So it's like, I had almost forgotten that he was even in the show.
Yeah.
And then he shows up towards the end. And so wasn't, I think if they could have just developed 1 or 2 of these guys, and I think that would have worked out better than just having just 3 or 4 really weak villains and just kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah, what did you feel? So there's like an overarching villain to the show that you only hear his name, Jesus, and when you finally do get to meet the circumstances around Jesus towards the end of the first season, it's not what it appeared to be. So what was your reaction watching that? Like, he's built up to be like this huge drug lord, and obviously things aren't as you thought.
I don't want to say disappointed, because at that point, once you meet him, I really didn't care that much about the show, so I wasn't that invested in it. But like I said, in broad strokes, this show thought that was going to be really clever, and it just wasn't as clever as it thought it was going to be.
I think they waited too long to even introduce that aspect of the show.
Yeah.
Like, they built this whole thing up, and it's just another letdown towards the end of the season.
For sure. And then when they find Jesus, the circumstances in which that particular person lived, it was just kind of like, nah, like that's not what I imagined at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely disappointing.
I agree.
So moving right along to the performances, for me, one of the bright spots of the show, I thought the cast was really great. I really like Steve Zahn. I think he's definitely overrated or underrated as far as an actor. He's a bit of a sleazeball in this particular series, but I think he plays it really well. The other two friends are great, but as far as the group of friends, Ben Chaplin kind of blew me away. He's not a character or an actor that I was familiar with. Apparently, he's in the original, the British show, and I was not aware of that until I was doing prep work for this episode. I guess he plays the Milo character, the Billy Zane character in the original series, so I thought that was kind of cool. And I just thought that he played the strong, silent type really well. And he plays a bigger role as the season goes on, but I liked the evolution of his character.
Yeah, he had the best arc in this in the show for sure. I agree. I like the chemistry the cast had. Like, I believed that they were a group of old friends.
Yeah, for sure.
That had their drama and whatnot. It was good seeing, what's his name? Romany Malco, the guy from 40-Year-Old Virgin. I just thought he didn't act anymore because he's not in anything.
I didn't watch Weeds, but I guess he was in like the first or two seasons of Weeds.
It's kind of weird. Like, this is a little off topic, but you look at the 40-Year-Old Virgin, everyone in that show is kind of part of that group of actors that are friends, and they show up in each other's things, except for that guy. Like, he was in that movie, and he's never shown up in anything with those guys ever again.
I wonder if there's a story behind that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to know, is if there is. Because I love him in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. He has some of the best lines. But, he was great. Just, I don't know. That I will agree. Like, very strong cast.
I thought the cat was really creepy, even though once you found out kind of the backstory of its character, it was kind of just weird and like not very well developed. But I thought obviously in the pilot, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I thought his character was fantastic. He was definitely really creepy. I just kind of wish that he was developed a little bit more later in the season. And there's something that happens to him and his character that maybe that was the reason they didn't want to waste screen time developing his character.
Yeah.
But I think that plot twist would have worked a little bit more for me if I cared about that character.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, that's what I have for performances and story. If you're ready to move on to the notable episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the first episode that I want to talk about, and I'm sure it's the first episode that you want to talk about as well, is the pilot.
Oh, for sure.
It's far and away the best episode of the season.
I agree.
Amazon does this weird thing where it kind of almost like old television used to do. It's for sure a pilot where they show it and then they see if anybody likes it and then they go with it. So I think this pilot was released January 2015. So it's been a year since you could have watched this episode, and then you would have had to wait. I think it was even a little bit over a year to see the rest of the series.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah, so that would have been a huge bummer because it's a really great episode, and it ends on a really awesome cliffhanger. You meet the cat for the first time, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, if I had to wait a year to see the resolution of that, I would have been pissed.
Oh yeah, for sure. If I had seen the pilot and was really pumped up for this show, and then I saw the rest of the 10 episode, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, because it has the best cliffhanger of all the episodes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And basically, for me, it showcases everything I like about the season, the few things that I did like about the season. I mean, it's beautiful set pieces. The guys get to bicker with one another. You kind of get a taste of some of the other stuff that happens later in the season, and it's not annoying yet. The bickering is not quite annoying yet. And like we said, the cliffhanger is just fantastic. It got me really excited for the rest of the season, and then ultimately I was disappointed.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
All right, so what's the next episode that you want to talk about?
I just have another one besides the pilot. It's Flares.
Okay.
It's the 4th episode, and honestly, it was tough picking another one, and I picked this one pretty much strictly for its cliffhanger as well. In my opinion, is probably the second best cliffhanger of the season.
This is the one where do we want to spoil it?
I mean, we don't have to. There is.
I know what episode you're talking about. Okay.
There's a big turn with one of the characters, at least at the end of this episode, that kind of sets. The character is Joel.
Yeah.
Who we talked about being Ben Chaplin, and he was, the surprise performance for us in this season, and it kind of sets him on the path that he kind of follows the rest of the season. He is kind of a lone wolf in a regard for a lot of later episodes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil anything, obviously. If we're not going to spoil this episode, I don't want to spoil anything with the show, but he ends up in a unique place at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciated for his character. And I think that this episode kind of started that arc, which I appreciated.
That being said, I know this is a little bit off topic, but you did mention his arc at the very end of the season. Are you going to watch season 2?
If there's a season 2, I would maybe watch like the first couple episodes to see where they're headed.
Yeah.
But the last thing I want to see is them running around Belize again, just stuck and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how you make this show different and keep it interesting. Not that it was really interesting for the first season, but I don't know. I think that the Mad Dog show, the UK version, went for multiple seasons, and I don't know where that show went, but I don't honestly know where they could go with the second season of this show with all 4 characters.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to change the dynamic of the show almost completely.
Like, I don't want to spoil what happens.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's like, why would you put the characters do get some resolution, and why would they ever put themselves back in that situation again?
You wouldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see, and like you, I'll probably watch the first couple of episodes just to see where they take it, because I think his character arc, like you said, is the best in the whole season, and where they leave it is really interesting. So I think there's a lot of different routes that they could go. Hopefully they don't they don't do what they did this season and just kind of make it kind of a shit show. But the episode that I wanted to talk about is the 6th episode. It's called Leslie. Like unlike the pilot, where that particular episode kind of showcased everything I liked about the series, Leslie kind of showcased everything I hated about the series. Every time this season gained momentum, any type of momentum, it completely slowed it down. And this was the worst example of that. I don't think I'm spoiling too much by saying this particular episode, the characters for, I would say, 90% of the episode, they're stuck in a quarantine area. Like, there's a cliffhanger at the end of episode 5, which I always think is strange when you have a cliffhanger at the end of an episode that you released all at the same time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess you want people to continue to watch it. But anyways, they get kind of trapped by the Coast Guard, or I don't know what you would call it in Belize, and so they get put in this quarantine zone, and it's just them bickering in a room. And then there's a lizard that, what's his name? The guy from 40-Year-Old Virgin. He's like, has a crush on or whatever. And so that's actually where the title of the episode comes from, because that's what he names the lizard. But it's just a filler episode. That's all it is. They're so close to getting out of Belize.
Yeah.
And it being the 5th episode, they kind of had to have something to stop them. And so they could get to 10 episodes. And this is all that was. It's just a filler episode. And it's almost kind of as an excuse to get them separated.
Yes.
Because two characters basically go out on their own, and those little side stories never really pay off. I guess Joel somewhat, because that's how, spoiler alert, he gets captured by one of the villains, and that kind of plays a part for bringing the characters back together. But, what's his name? It's not Lex. What's Kobe?
Yeah, Kobe.
Kobe. That storyline is never, he meets some woman in a hotel, and it's never like, that's just 15 minutes I just had to watch.
Yeah.
And it's just, it never resolves itself or it never comes back. And I feel like there's a lot of, Steve Zahn's character gets mugged at one point, and it never really pays off, other than it's just an excuse for him to get arrested. A lot of things. We could keep listing a ton more of those, just like one-off threads that don't really pay off
all
at all.
All of the fucking terrible decisions his character makes.
Yeah,
especially Kobe.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's a dickhead. But it just, as the pilot was a perfect example, kind of a microcosm of the things that I really liked about the show, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Leslie was kind of an example, the perfect example of all of the things that I hated about this season.
Yeah, that whole episode, I was like, so this isn't legit, right? Like, what's the disease that they're being quarantined for? Is it smallpox?
Yep.
Okay, and so they're quarantined because there's a smallpox outbreak or whatever. And I'm like, there's no way there's a smallpox outbreak. Like, so how is this? What's the twist here? And then there's nothing happens.
It just fizzles out.
It's just so weird. It's a weird episode.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I have for Mad Dogs.
I agree.
I would say skip it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. With this being such a golden age of television and there being so many great things to watch, like there's a billion other things that I'd rather wish I would have sunk my time into.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't know if I would appreciate it a little bit more if I had seen the British show. Maybe that's because I looked on Amazon Instant Video. It's got a 4.3 out of 5.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we're missing something with it, or maybe we're not as easily. I mean, look at the biggest shows in America, like NCIS and that kind of stuff that we don't appreciate, or I wouldn't say appreciate, but that we don't like.
Yeah.
So maybe we're just not the audience for it. But
speaking of star rating, what would you ultimately give it?
2.5.
Yeah, I have 3 on my notes, but I think I'm going to bump it down to 2.5 now that we've kind of discussed it a little bit more.
I could be talked up to 3 just because the cast was so great, but
it's beautifully shot and the cast are great, and the pilot was really great.
I bet the cast like fucking thanked their managers when they got this job though, because they got to hang out probably in Belize. I'm assuming.
I think if I'm not mistaken, it was shot in Puerto Rico.
Either way, just like white sand, blue water, like
oh yeah, for sure.
However long, like Steve Zahn was probably like, "Thank you," after all the shitty movies I've done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a beautifully shot. There's a particular scene where they're in a car and they're parked in the car and they keep doing like a wide shot of just the jungle, and it was fun to look at.
Yeah,
but just the bickering between the characters and the weird threads that just never pay off. It was definitely a bummer, and I would not suggest watching it.
I agree.
All right. So our last segment is just plainly called Nerd Favorite. I almost said Nerd Comic for some strange reason. A Nerd Favorite. We take turns each episode by asking a very nerdy question, what your favorite blank is. It's Tyler's week. So what's Nerd Favorite this week?
The last few weeks, we've kind of gotten away from the what's your favorite blank. Yeah. Not to say that format is dead, but there's just so many interesting questions that nerds like to ask each other relating to the material and the pop culture they love. So I'm going to kind of stick with that this week and ask you a different type of question.
Okay.
So it seems like all I hear about are TV shows that are being revived.
Okay.
So we have Fuller House on Netflix, which is a revival of Full House. X-Files did a revival. 24 had a revival. What else? The tons. I think MacGyver is getting a revival, but that might be more of a reboot.
Yeah, I think that's more of a reboot. Yeah.
A lot of older TV shows are getting revisited. So I want to know which show you would like to see get a revival or be revisited, whether it's for a full season or for like a mini series like the X-Files did, just something that you would like to see from a show that's no longer on the air.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Dexter, which
oh, come on.
I know that's an obvious answer for me, but I really just hated the way that show ended. and I want better resolution to the character. And that's why I would like to see it come back for like 6 episodes to either kill him off or give us some kind of better resolution than what we were left with. Because that show for the first 5 seasons was my favorite show of all time.
5? Really? You're going to give it 5?
Well, the end of season 4 is when Rita dies, and that kept me really intrigued.
Yeah.
And then season 5 just kind of...
Spoiler alert.
All right. Season 5 just kind of seeing how he dealt with that. And then after that, it kind of spirals for me. I love that character so much, and things just fall apart so bad in that show that I want to see it done some justice and kind of wrapped up properly.
I wasn't upset with how obvious a choice it is, because I think ultimately my choice, I'm just kind of deciding as I'm talking right now what my choice will be, but it's not because it's an obvious choice. It's just because I don't think that show deserves it. One of the reasons I didn't like it was I felt like it overstayed its welcome.
Yeah.
And so why would you give a show that you already thought overstayed its welcome more episodes?
I would say you've taken 5 or 6 years off now. You've regained your composure. You've heard how much fans hated it. Take that feedback, and I'm sure that they at Showtime have ideas dwelling, because that's their one big property they have.
Shameless.
Make it better. I like Shameless a lot, but I don't think it's the commercial hit that Dexter is, obviously. Sure. So, I don't know. It's like their Batman. Reinvent it and give the character some closure.
Okay. So, my choice, going with the most obvious choice, if you know me, it's Seinfeld. I'm saying that not because it's one of my favorite shows of all time. And I think if you asked me this question 4 or 5 years ago, I think I may have gone with Arrested Development, but that's already gotten another season, and it looks like it's going to get another season. So I'm going to go with Seinfeld, just because, almost like Dexter, that finale, even though I didn't hate it as much as most people did, it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
And I would like to see those characters complain and bitch about Twitter and Instagram and the stuff that's come up since, and dating in this particular. One of the things I really liked about Master of None was the fact that it kind of touched on some of that stuff. And I think I would really enjoy seeing those characters deal with that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it would kind of be the perfect show to bring back. It'll never come back. There's no way, with the whole Michael Richards thing, and Jerry Seinfeld kind of just loves doing stand-up and kind of out of the limelight. And with the success of Veep, I mean, there's no fucking way. But if I'm just in my perfect world, that would be the show that would come back. And I just love to see those friends complain about modern romance type of stuff and Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that.
All right, cool.
All right, so that's the last of this episode 83. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, which is also at The Nerds Podcast. To check out our new Twitch channel, check out our YouTube channel, and follow us on Google Plus as well. You can email us at thenerdsyourlooking@gmail.com. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. Rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Basically, any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. Check me out. I'm doing a stand-up show, it's an Evansville roast on March 11th. Tickets will be available soon. I'll have a lot more details coming up in the next week or so definitely check that out.
If you know what Evansville is.
Yeah, if you're in the area and you're interested in something like that, definitely check it out. For Patrick Coote,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
Adios.